I was planning to go home and get some rest. I had spent the entire day in the garden, turning over the soil, pulling out weeds, carrying bags, exhausting myself until I couldn't feel my back anymore. On the bus ride home, I had just one dream: to open the door to my apartment, take off my dirty shoes, have a scorching hot shower, and collapse into my bed without talking to anyone. I didn't want anything else, just silence, just peace. But that evening, as I slid my key into the lock, I realized something was wrong. The key went in, but it wouldn't turn. I forced it a little, then pressed down on the handle and the door opened. It wasn't even locked. At that moment, I felt a chill run through my stomach. I called my husband once, then twice. No answer. And when I entered the hallway, I froze. In front of me was a pile of shoes I had never seen before. Muddy sneakers, crushed boots, dirty slippers, children's boots, dried mud everywhere. My entryway, my apartment, my space suddenly looked like it belonged to strangers. And that's when she appeared. My husband's sister, Lena. She walked calmly toward me as if she were at home. She was wearing my bathrobe, the one I only put on after a shower. At her feet were my slippers. She was smoking and blew her smoke almost in my face before laughing insolently. She threw something at me like, "Ah, there you are at last, Madam Landlady. Did you bring any potatoes? Because here we're starving. Your husband bought cheap pasta. We won't survive on that." I set my bags down on the floor without taking my eyes off her. I asked her what she was doing in my house. She answered me with that unbearable tone people use when they already feel entitled. "I'm staying here for a while. There are renovations at my place. It's unlivable. Your husband said yes. We're family, aren't we?" I turned to my husband. He was sitting in the kitchen, head down, unable to look me in the eye. And at that moment, I understood that he knew exactly what he had done. I calmly asked him if he had something to explain to me. His voice was trembling. He stammered that his sister had problems, that she had nowhere to go, that she was with her children, that he couldn't leave her outside, as if I were a monster for wanting to understand why my apartment had been turned into a squat without even telling me. Then I went further, all the way to the room we were preparing for our future child. That room was my dream. We had chosen a beautiful wallpaper, light, elegant, expensive. We had thought about the curtains, the atmosphere, the furniture. It wasn't just a room. It was the place where I put my most intimate hopes. And when I saw the state of the walls, I thought I was going to collapse. My wallpaper had been covered with posters stuck on crookedly, children's drawings taped up, marker stains, and fingerprints. Everything was ruined, everything. I shouted her name so loudly that even the walls must have shaken. I asked her what she had done. And she, her mouth still full, answered me with incredible contempt that my walls were sad, that she had brightened up the room for her children, that I should almost thank her, as if destroying what I had lovingly built was some kind of favor. My fists were clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my skin. But the worst part is that my husband stepped in, not to defend me, but to defend his sister. At that moment, something inside me began to die. The following days were a nightmare. My apartment was no longer my home. It had become a train station, a campsite, a place where everyone did whatever they wanted. In the morning, it was impossible to get into the bathroom, because Lena would lock herself in there for an hour, using my shampoos, my masks, my creams, my scrubs, everything I bought with my own money. When I protested, she would look at me wide-eyed and say, "What? You work? You can buy more. Me, I'm alone with my children. Who's going to pay for mine?" Her two boys ran everywhere, climbed on the furniture, scattered crumbs in the carpets, banged on the doors, drew on the surfaces. And my husband, he was coming home later and later. Officially, he had a lot of work. In reality, he was running away. He was running from his sister, shouting, from my anger, from his own cowardice. He preferred to spend time elsewhere rather than face the chaos he had let into our lives. Then the utility bill arrived. I opened it absent-mindedly. And then, one detail sent a chill down my spine. Number of declared occupants, 5. 5. I read it several times, thinking I must have misread. Then I understood. I went up to the apartment with the document in hand and placed it on my husband's lap. I asked him if he had declared them. He started to fall apart. Yes, he had temporarily registered his sister and her children at our address, without asking my opinion, without even telling me, because she needed social assistance, benefits, advantages, documents, services. And to him, that seemed normal. He told me, "It's just for 6 months. Just for 6 months. as if we were talking about a bag left in a corner, as if it wasn't an apartment with a mortgage, as if we hadn't signed any contract, as if his signature alone erased my very existence. I asked him if he had at least reread the mortgage contract. Of course not. I had to remind him that in a mortgaged property, registering third parties without the bank's approval could constitute a serious violation. But Lena, on the other hand, wasn't afraid of anything. She made fun of me. She actually dared to tell me that the bank wouldn't do anything, that I was jealous, bitter, frustrated. Then she uttered a vile, low, cruel sentence, hitting exactly where she knew it would hurt. She insinuated that if I was so nervous it was because she had children and I didn't. That sentence struck me right in the heart because she knew nothing, or pretended to know nothing, about everything I had been through. The treatments, the hopes, the appointments, the disappointments, the tears shed in silence in the bathroom. And while she was stabbing me in the chest, my husband once again did nothing. Nothing. He murmured that we were a family, that we had to share, that we had to understand. At that moment, I think I no longer felt love, only disgust. And as if that weren't enough, one evening coming home from work, I found a pair of large men's boots in the entryway. A smell of sweat and tobacco lingered in the air. In my kitchen, sitting at my table drinking from my favorite mug, there was a stranger, a big vulgar man, completely at ease as if he had always lived there. Lena, all proud, announced to me that his name was Kolya, that she was starting a new life, that he was a serious man, that he worked as a security guard in a supermarket. He looked at me, greeted me as if I were the guest in my own home, then asked if there was any beer. I didn't even answer. I went straight to my room and started emptying the kitchen cupboards. Tea, coffee, sugar, cookies, pasta. Everything I had bought, everything that belonged to me, I moved it into my room. I locked the door. That's when Lena exploded. She screamed that I was hiding food from the children, that I was inhuman, monstrous. But I knew very well who I was doing it for. Not against the children, but against her new partner, against this invasion that was becoming more aggressive every day. That evening, I called the police because the man had started smoking in my kitchen as if it were a speakeasy. When they arrived, I naively thought they would at least make this stranger leave. But no, the papers were in order. Lena and the children's temporary registration existed. As for the man, he was presented as just a visitor. The result, no one did anything. The officers barely looked up. Family dispute, they said, something you need to sort out among yourselves? Just a simple fine for smoking, and that was it. When the door closed behind them, my husband came out of his hiding place. Yes, he had hidden the entire time they were there, and he blamed me for bringing shame to the family. At that moment, I looked at him for a long time, and I knew there was no turning back. I replied to him very calmly that from now on, I would no longer try to convince anyone. I was going to act according to the law.